It's just fantastic. Captain's log, subdate 210308.5. One crack has been discovered so far within the cubes. As that hole has now been plugged, we've set the expert the task of trying to find any more. What we've done to ensure that crack no longer exists is have doctors diagnose over Zoom, and if any of it requires surgery, we cauterize it with a soldering iron. Welcome everyone to the Halls of Injustice. Today we have two inmates bound for the ISO cubes. They are inmates 063 and 063.1. They don't have names, so we're going to call them Jane and Jane Does. There's a reason for that, we'll get to it soon. The case we are about to cover is quite interesting and also reminiscent of one concerning a young James Bulger. I will link a video by Count Dankula on that particular subject, and it does lead to a conversation on what rights the taxpayer should pay for inmates. Many will undoubtedly now say, none. Short drop and a sudden stop is preferable. And as we get further into this particular story, you're gonna, sympathize. So for this we need Angela Wrightson, a 39-year-old woman from Hartlepool, who was also known locally as Alco Angie, and was known to let school children come over and drink in her living room. She was a very friendly type, but because of her situation, she was also considered a vulnerable woman. So who'd want to take advantage of that and ruin it for everyone else, i.e. the other school kids that would come over? For this, we go to December 2014. Angela had two schoolgirls over, aged 13 and 14. These two were in the care system, and also deemed, much like Angela, highly vulnerable. The level of vulnerability, though, is going to be questionable as we get further into this. And the story, consider this a trigger warning, is not a pleasant one. Over a period of 5 hours, Jane Doe and Jane Doe took selfies with Angela, uploaded bits and clips to Snapchat. Oh, and they assaulted her with a ceramic vase, a TV, a printer, a picture frame, a shovel, glass ornaments, and a kettle, pictures of which are in the article linked down below. No, I'm not going to show you them. The end result was Angela dying, which means a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old girl committed murder. And as they had been broadcasting much of that evidence on social media, yeah, they kind of got busted. The selfies with her did them no favours, nor did their prints all over the evidence. In 2016, Jane Doe and Jane Doe were both sentenced to life with a 15-year minimum sentence. Because of their ages, and it is a long-standing principle I understand and respect, because they are under the age of 18, they retain anonymity until they turn 18. So, we're in 2021 now. They are both over the age of 18. I bet you're all wondering, why have I still called them Jane Doe and Jane Doe? Well, if you remember earlier, I mentioned that this case had an odd hint of James Bulger in it. I referenced that because Robert Thompson and John Venables, the two young boys that killed James Bulger, were given lifelong anonymity. Over the years, there are a number of people who have actually been granted as such. This status is quite a lofty one. The more notable names would include those two. And yes, Robert Thompson went on to live a very quiet life. No one knows where he is or what he does. John Venables, child porn, he's back in prison. Other names people might remember would include Mary Bell, who at the age of 10 and 11 strangled two small children in Newcastle in 1968. In 2003, she actually applied for lifelong anonymity. Maxine Carr, who was the girlfriend of Ian Huntley, who murdered Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman back in 2002. She obtained her new identity in 2005. The Edlington brothers, who were convicted of GBH and for torturing and humiliating two young boys in South Yorkshire in 2010. They were 10 and 11 at the time, and in 2016, they were given anonymity. And then final one more notably would be RXG, who was 14 and had plotted to murder police officers in Australia on Anzac Day. This is quite the illustrious group to want to be boxed in with, right? Jane Doe and Jane Doe were granted lifelong anonymity, to the point we don't even know their original names before then, which is where the issue has arisen, one which the government is vehemently against. In the past, all these people have been granted lifelong anonymity, but their original name is known. In this, we don't even get to know who they were, and that's a bit of a problem. Now granted, they're in prison for 15 years at least, or for another 8, and then they're out. But the argument of lifelong anonymity is one many have had and continue to have, and with this particular case I'm not entirely sure where I sit, so I have to take it from a different tact. My view, ignoring the anonymity, is focusing on the fact these two sadists brutalized and abused and then murdered a vulnerable 39-year-old woman who had welcomed them into her home, life without parole. That's my view. Sadly, because I have no faces to put in the cubes, all we get to look at is a cube and 2 PNG question marks perhaps. The reason given by the judge as to why the reporting restrictions would not be lifted is that one of the girls has been deemed vulnerable and high risk of suicide. I'm sure many people have just rolled their eyes. I'm sure others have said, "Are you not familiar with consequences? You stopped mid-slaughter to take selfies and you're seen smiling in the pictures." Even Hartlepool's MP Mike Hill has blasted this decision and said it is a matter of public safety that they be unmasked, being quoted as saying, "The murder of Angela Wrightson shook Hartlepool as the details were made public, and their shock still resonates today. To discover that the perpetrators of such a gruesome and heinous crime have been granted lifelong anonymity is frankly shocking and disappointing. While I understand the need to protect the identities of minors, once these criminals are of age in most circumstances, people should be made aware of their crime as a matter of public safety. The same level of privacy would not be extended to murderers who commit their crimes as adults. I know many people in Hartlepool will be as disappointed as I am by this decision today." Mrs. Justice Tipples, who delivered this news, has said that I am quite satisfied that this is a case where there is a real and immediate risk of serious physical harm or death to Jane Doe, F they've listed her as, at her own hand, if her anonymity is not preserved. This is an exceptional case where it is necessary to grant F, Jane Doe, the injunction sought in order to prevent her from being identified in connection with the murder of Angela Wrightson. In connection? You mean the person that committed it? With the other one? The judge has also indicated that the other girl is also entitled to an injunction, noting that expert psychological evidence had shown that if her identity was revealed, it would significantly increase her risk of self-harm. In the judgment, the judge notes it is clear there is ongoing media interest, and if the girls' identities were revealed, it is inevitable that this will attract very significant media coverage locally and nationally. I'll be honest, that's the least of your concerns. People don't like it when children do something this stupid. They'll all come at you with a slipper or a stick. In my childhood, it would have been shaped like a wooden spoon, and you'll have noticed it left your parents' hand and was simply replaced with their hand. It's quite painful. Justice Tipples does go on to say, however, the evidence before me does not demonstrate convincingly that, if the claimant's identities are revealed, there is a real and immediate risk of serious physical harm or death to either from third parties. Also saying that while there is evidence of identifiable threats from social media and online comments, none of it was considered credible. This case is quite tricky. I can understand and sympathise with why they've been granted anonymity, but I also can fully respect why anonymity in this particular case is a crock of bollocks. But I do want to know what you think about it. I will link the article. Please consider reading it. It is quite fascinating. There are plenty of images that help better convey what they did, and I guess place more gravitas on what they did so as to better understand why others say you shouldn't have anonymity. And it certainly should not come at the cost of the taxpayer, so please do let me know in the comments down below. I hope you'll have a fantastic Tuesday. Thank you all very much for listening.